quintessential comfort food for many in Singapore. But did you know this dish of pork soup has been in, well, hot soup? Some years ago, Malaysia staked its claim on Bak Kut Teh, maintaining that they were the ones who created the dish. Media around the world picked up on the claim.
So here's a report from the Sydney Morning Herald. Headlines state, Malaysian food being hijacked. And all the way from Pakistan, English publication Dawn reported that whilst Minister Ng didn't name which countries are hijacking the dishes, but though she did name unpopular around the world, particularly in neighbouring countries like Indonesia and Singapore. In the Korea Herald, she was quoted as saying laksa, nasi lemak, bak kut teh and other local favourites must be branded as Malaysian tourism products.
And soon, the heat was turned up in cyberspace.
So it seems until Malaysia made the statement that bak kut teh is a truly Malaysian creation, neither side of the causeway really staked a serious claim to its origins. But once ribbed, Singapore wasn't going to go down without a fight. And you can bet that Malaysia would have a bone to pick as well.
I'm Ming Tan, chef and culinary consultant. And in this series, I'll be getting to the bottom of food fights.
So is bak kut teh a Singaporean creation or a Malaysian dish that Singaporeans hijacked? It's time to find out if there's truth to this Malaysian accusation or if it's all just hogwash.
Just to drive along Singapore streets alone is enough to tell us that this country certainly loves its bak kut teh. Just look at the sheer number of bak kut teh stalls in this stretch alone. And how about along this stretch? And this one. In fact, a quick check revealed that there are nearly 70 bak kut teh restaurants in all of Singapore. That's more than one for every kilometre of Singapore's width. For me, there's nothing quite like a comforting bowl of hot soup for supper.
Hello, ni hao, ni hao. Shall we do the premium loin ribs?
I want the short.
Premium short.
I like the long gu, the long one.
This is how I normally have bak kut teh, with my foodie friends. It's more than just a meal. It's a feast.
You know what I love about coming here, guys? It's looking at the wall of fame.
So young, look at that, Ji Chow.
Chow Yun Fat.
Tried with us several times also. How did you guys feel when Malaysia claimed this dish as their own a while back?
I think Bak Kut Teh is like so Singaporean because it's been so interwoven into our social fabric that if you take it away, it just seems damn bizarre.
Most of my experiences are at night with Bak Kut Teh, I would say, and quite late lah.
Growing up in Singapore, right? Bak Kut Teh is commonly associated as a supper, post-partying sort of food, isn't it? Because when you've had some alcohol in the system, this is the kind of food you want to soak it up.
My Bak Kut Teh experiences are twofold. The first is by myself, bashing down a lunch. The other experience I have is with a group of friends and we share a whole bunch of random stuff and we just go for it. That is Bak Kut Teh.
Yeah, because you cannot eat a whole bowl of liver and kidney, right?
If you're me, bro, anything's possible.
So there's this Japanese guy, Mr. Takahashi, who loved the Singapore version of the Bak Kut Teh so much, he actually roped in an F&B consultant and a food researcher to come to Singapore to try 300 over tastings of our Bak Kut Teh, just so that he could try to recreate this taste in Tokyo.
I heard he made a restaurant there doing Singaporean Bak Kut Teh.
Yeah.
So my brother was recently in Germany for work and he told me that after 3 weeks he craved Singaporean food so much, he went and bought an electric kettle and made Bak Kut Teh inside the kettle. He was desperate for local food. That's what got him going.
Well, that much.
That much. Then he threw the kettle away lah.
We might love our Bak Kut Teh, But that doesn't mean we created the dish. So I'm heading to what could be one of the oldest stalls in Singapore to get to the bottom of the mystery.
老板，早安，Hello。
Lau Ati, by the way, isn't the name of the owner. The owner is Mr. Sim Chun Lien. Lau Ati, which means old little brother, is just the name of his stall. In 1965, Mr. Sim's uncle had set up a Bak Kut Teh stall. Mr. Sim apprenticed under him, learning the art of Bak Kut Teh from the man.
潮州市的肉骨茶是我舅舅做出来的，做到比较名声比较大，这是我舅舅做出来的。我舅舅本来是驾驳船的嘛，载货驾驳船。
之前他是从哪里学到这种肉骨茶的呢？
他就在王家三角那边，就是 River Valley 那边游泳池对面，在那边就是吃肉骨茶先。后来呢，一对两公婆老人家，他做肉骨茶的，他常常在他的店里吃。
肉骨茶肯定是新加坡的这道菜嘛？
对，那个时候还没有，好像肉骨茶在新加坡那个时候还不是很出名，这道菜就好像很普通的东西，就没有是。后来我就把那个王家三角肉骨茶做的很火红，变成有一些比较有身份呐、做生意人呐、来吃的时候，他们就把这个肉骨茶叫做潮州式肉骨茶。
所以你舅舅从这两公婆学到煮潮州肉骨茶。
对，那个时候我年纪还小，我就不清楚他们是从几年开始的，因为我1948年出世嘛，他们应该是在50年头就卖了。
So this recipe can trace its roots all the way back to the 1950s or perhaps even earlier.
Definitely one of the earliest versions of Bak Kut Teh in Singapore. 哇，这样大块！
哎，
除了这种潮州式的肉骨茶，还有其他的肉骨茶吗？还有几种？
潮州的肉骨茶就是这个配料就是这样，比较清淡。他们这个名称福建的就是有药材，他没有放那个黑酱油。新加坡人对这个福建式的比较不感兴趣。如果你要尝试福建式肉骨茶，就去马来西亚。马来西亚就有很多档那个肉骨茶，福建式有药材的。
A Hokkien version that's popular up in Malaysia. Could that be an even earlier style of Bak Kut Teh? Looks like I need to head up and find out.
Until 2009, no one thought to ask who came up with Bak Kut Teh. In an effort to promote Malaysian cuisine, the Minister of Tourism at the time, Ng Yen Yen, staked her claim on a number of dishes, calling them Malaysian, implying Malaysia created them.
The pale, peppery version of Bak Kut Teh that I've known and loved for years in Singapore is not the only version out there. There's another version. It's darker, herbal, more Hokkien in style, and this is commonly eaten in Klang, Malaysia. I'm not so familiar with it, which is why I'm headed to the crucible of Bak Kut Teh in Malaysia to find out if this version predates the one that we have in Singapore.
I'm here to meet a travel blogger and researcher who will tell me how the Malaysian Hokkien Bak Kut Teh may be an earlier version of the Singapore Teochew Bak Kut Teh. Ng Sok Peng reckons she has eaten over 100 bowls of Bak Kut Teh last year alone, all in the name of research.
Why have you arranged for us to meet in this particular part of Klang?
这个地方呢是巴生呢最早期就是苦力在这边做工的地方。早期呢从中国南下来的福建人呢，他们都有一种习惯就是喜欢喝那个肉骨汤。那么呢，他们在这一边呢就觉得喝那个肉骨汤是有一种熟悉感。他们就是可能要大清早起来做苦力，所以他们呢在肉骨汤里面呢都会加上了一些药材。那这些药材可以帮到他们去风湿啦，也是取暖的。肉骨茶一定要有药材的。
But we call the version in Singapore Bak Kut Teh and it doesn't have herbs.
我觉得可以就是把肉骨茶扯在这一个故事里头的呢，就是在马来西亚的雪兰莪州的嘉颖这个地方呢，有一道叫做辣汤。他们各家的工友呢，他们很喜欢，就是很早起身嘛，他们早上呢都是想要喝一碗热汤去胶原，或者说从橡胶园回来之后呢，他们都想要喝一碗辣汤，所以说他们就加了那个姜跟那个胡椒下去煮的这个辣汤。那么这个辣汤呢，给我吃起来的感觉呢，又和新加坡的肉骨茶有很大的相似度。
Commercial rubber plantations began in Kajang in the early 1900s. The same time Klang became an active British port. And Singapore's so-called version of Teochew Bak Kut Teh might be nothing more than a peppery soup created by rubber tappers of Kajang. But whether it's with or without herbs, Sok Ping claims both versions originated from Malaysia.
But Singapore also had coolies working in our ports from a very early point as well.
我现在发一个讯息给你，可能你去到这一个地方呢，你就会找到了这个肉骨茶的真相了，也可能会帮到你找到你想要的心中的答案。
Okay.
The clue from Sok Ping has taken me here.
Hello, John.
Hi, hello.
Hi. I've been told you have proof that Malaysia invented Bak Kut Teh.
因为有一个传言，就是由巴古蝶的名字就是我爷爷的名字演变成来，所以他刚开始卖这个肉骨汤的时候，人没有叫肉骨茶的嘛。久而久之后，很多人就是讲，哎，你去哪里吃啊？我们去肉骨地那边吃。因为我的爷爷名字叫做李文帝，所以演变成咗肉骨茶这3个字出来。
Bak Kut Teh.
啊，
So is this the store that your grandfather started when he first came here?
这件不是，这件是我的爷爷的第4个儿子爸爸，也就是我爸爸在开的。那就是我爷爷去世了的时候，他才过来开这间。
那先开的店在哪里？
现在我爷爷的店是在后街那一边。
So if all this is to be believed, it would seem that until Lee Boon Tay started selling Bak Kut Teh, there was no definitive version of the dark herbal pork rib soup. There wasn't even a name to the soup. He didn't just popularize the dish, he was the dish.
So this is the Bak Kut Teh that your grandfather, Mr. Lee Boon Tay, first created.
那些秘方我还是尽量是一模一样，只是有些那些煮法因为都会有改变哦。以前他们那是用火炭之类嘛，现在是没有了。现在我就慢慢演变成是煤气啊。
So this is very different from what I recognize and understand as Bak Kut Teh. It's a bit stronger, definitely. It's got the flavor of the herbs. So much going on in my mouth, but it's delicious.
Lee Boon Tay, the man who purportedly gave Bak Kut Teh its name, started his store in 1938. If that is the case, this was almost 20 years before the elderly couple in Singapore sold Bak Kut Teh and then taught Mr. Sim's uncle to make it. It would seem that Malaysia has quite compelling evidence that they created Bak Kut Teh. I won't lie. This has been more than a little disappointing to me. It's the kind of indignance that I think only a fellow lover of Singaporean street food would understand.
Hi, Ming.
Hey, Tony,
Morning.
come.
Hey.
Have a cup of tea.
Okay.
I'm
right.
drowning my sorrows in tea.
Why? What's bothering you?
Tony Boy is a food blogger who writes regularly about local food. I tell him about what I found in Malaysia.
Wait. Singapore have a parallel history. We also have origin stories about Bak Kut Teh being the health tonic for coolies.
So there is hope that Bak Kut Teh could be Singaporean still.
Yes.
We started out with a simple question. Is Bak Kut Teh a Singaporean creation or a Malaysian one? That led me to Klang, Malaysia, where Herbal Bak Kut Teh first made an appearance. While there, Malaysia served up theory after theory that seemed to say that Malaysia had won the food fight. But then when I came home, I was told that Singapore can't throw in the towel or soup spoon just yet. We pick up the coolie thread that was left hanging in Klang. The Malaysians had claimed that their coolies in Klang were making Bak Kut Teh in the early 1900s. But Singapore had coolies too in that period of time.
Singapore have our own coolie origin story too. The coolies working at Singapore River have their version of Bak Kut Teh, which they make with low quality pork, mostly bones, because of the meager salary. And because they were suffering from ailments from hard work, they needed the herbs to help strengthen their bodies. They also have spices and they add dark soy sauce into their soup, resulting in this dark herbal Bak Kut Teh.
This probably happened as early as the 1820s, shortly after Singapore became a free port. We're standing where the first bowls of Bak Kut Teh in Singapore were possibly made.
Let me get this right, man. The Teochew version is an evolution of the Hokkien version of Bak Kut Teh.
The first version of Bak Kut Teh is herbal and it is both Hokkien and Teochew. Now, the Hokkien Bak Kut Teh remain herbal. The Teochew Bak Kut Teh, around about the 50s, 60s, start to evolve. They remove the herbs and they put in premium pepper plus premium cuts of meat, and it became our Singapore peppery Teochew Bak Kut Teh. To back up our accounts of Singapore coolie Bak Kut Teh, I have eyewitness accounts, and this person doesn't even sell Bak Kut Teh. Hi, Kendry.
Hey, hi, Tony.
Hey,
Hi.
hey, I brought my friend
Yeah.
Ming to come and see you.
Hi, Henry. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for having
Come,
us.
let's have a cup of tea over
Thank
here.
you, thank you. So Tony tells me you have proof of the Singapore coolie origin story for Bak Kut Teh.
Yes, since 1925, we have been supplying tea to Bak Kut Teh store, to the coolies, and that's where, men actually interact at the Bak Kut Teh store for a cup of tea. We have some of the documents where we have import the teas from mainland China. You can take a look. Some of the receipts.
Holding a piece of history, this says 1938 on this receipt. But your business has been around since 1925.
Yeah. When Second World War broke out, most of the documents were destroyed. So these are considered the lucky one that we managed to treasure and kept. Wow. Yeah.
And so this is actual evidence of the tea trade to various merchants, including the Bak Kut Teh stores during the 1920s and 1930s. What kind of Bak Kut Teh were they eating at that point?
The very traditional dark sauce Hokkien style Bak Kut Teh and with tea. We are still supplying the tea to the one in the Maxwell Market. Maybe you can try that out. That is the Herbal one.
Oh, I know that store. I'm very familiar with it. Ming, let me take you to a place for more Bak Kut Teh history. Back in the 1920s, Lee Ong Se was a pioneer street hawker selling Bak Kut Teh near the Singapore River. He later moved his store into Nanking Street. As a proud Hokkien, he sells Hokkien-style Bak Kut Teh.
Okay, the dark kind.
Yes, dark and herbal. It's like the kind they sell in Klang, which the Malaysians say came to Malaysia around 1930, 1940.
And this store was around selling bak kut teh?
It can trace its background back to the 1920s. Sadly, Lee Ong Se sold his last bowl of Bak Kut Teh in 1989 because they had to develop this Nanking Street.
So this was where Lee Ong Se's store used to be, between these two shop houses, right here.
One of Lee Ong Se's workers was given the recipe by Lee Ong Se to start her own Bak Kut Teh store, and she operates in Maxwell Food Centre. And that is the only link left to Lee Ong Se's Bak Kut Teh today.
Awesome.
And we are about to have a taste of history. Bak Kut Teh of the 1920s.
This the one, this one.
Ah, I see.
Madam Teo Han Po is a faithful disciple of Lee Ong Se's.
Hello， 老板娘，我带朋友来Ming来品尝你的肉骨茶。
So how close is your version to Lee Ong Se's version?
相同啊，一样的药材，一样的东西，
一样的药材，一模一样
的酱油，全部都一样。
你的顾客通常是
啊，我老板开档的时候5点，差不多很多鼓励，有的工来吃，有的要去做工吃，去做半夜的工的，回来就吃啊。
哦。So Malaysia says Bak Kut Teh is their dish, and that they can trace their origins for this dish back to China. What do you think?
我们现在吃的是新加坡的福建肉骨茶。
So why sell this particular version of Bak Kut Teh when the Teochew version is a bit more popular?
因为以前老板卖这种传下来，我就照老板的样子卖了，没有改过了。
So it appears that this version of Bak Kut Teh that Malaysians claim, the dark and herbal type, actually existed in Singapore in the 1920s. That's a full 10 years before it appeared in Klang in the 1930s. There is a similar origin point. Chinese migrants from southern China bringing the ideas for this dish into the region. But that's enough conclusively to tell me that this dish is Singaporean.